All right. Thank you so much for being here on this podcast. We have a special guest, and I know I say that for every freaking podcast episode, but truly, we have the consulting guy, Mohammad Misbah. Check out his Instagram, check out his podcast down below. So many great things about it. Honestly, it started out because you asked me to be on your podcast, and now returning the favor.
That's how the world spins.
So, first off, for people who don't know about you, can you give us a little short introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. I am Batman. No, that's not the review. So thanks for having me, Christine. For those who don't know me, my name is Mohammad Misbah. I run a social media channel called The Consulting Guy. Professionally, I am now ex-senior manager at Accenture. I left a few weeks back. At Accenture, I was part of the financial services practice, focused on the CRM space, doing everything from strategy all the way to delivery. I've been in the firm for the past almost a decade, focused predominantly on financial services, and have done everything from large scale transformations, and I hate that word, as I always say, to small, quick couple week engagements. Love the firm, love my career, as is seen by the Consulting Podcast and the Consulting Guy. So thank you for having me, Christine.
Thank you. And this is an icebreaker I like to ask in all of my podcast episodes. So, if you had all the time in the world, what would you be doing?
All the time in the world and all the money?
I don't know about that. You probably, if you had all the time in the world to make that money.
If I had all the time in the world, I would be sleeping, because with the 2-year-old now running around and my career, sometimes sleep takes a hit. No, all jokes aside, I think all the time in the world, I would still be a consultant. I love consulting as a career. Undergrad, I was studying engineering. So I graduated with mechanical engineering degree with a concentration in aerospace, and haven't worked a day in engineering. Luckily, I stumbled upon, and we could get into this, consulting as a career right out of college. And I've loved it since. I mean, I think it's the best career, and I'm a cheerleader for it. So I'm probably not the best person to have an unbiased view, but I would still be doing the same thing. And unprofessionally, or as a side hustles, I would probably be doing the same things around. I like to shoot videos, edit videos, create content on YouTube and podcast. Crypto, I'm a big investor. Real estate, I'm a big investor. And I also am an angel investor to a couple of startups.
Ooh, I did not know about that one.
You gotta diversify, all over.
So this is actually something I was a little bit curious about, but I first found out about you through, I don't know how, but it was through Roger, like someone that we mutually know. Like he tagged you on something, and I was like, oh, there he is. And then I think I realized, like, oh, I didn't know the consulting guy was at Accenture. For some reason, I thought he was just like at some random consulting firm. And then I was like, this is a pretty cool page. At first, it was like, I've never seen any consulting related ish, if you consider that, in an Instagram account that's not meme related. But kind of curious, like, how did you even start that? Was it something you wanted to do for fun, or was it more of a personal account that ended up growing into something else?
It was, I would say, hybrid.
Okay.
Where I from the beginning have a passion to shoot videos and use my creative sides to tell stories, right? And I've done some smaller, just side projects, right? Nothing work related. At the same time, just looking at my journey coming into consulting, the Consulting Guy, I think the inception of it was 4 years ago now. Where when I had joined, 9 years ago into consulting, I had no idea what consulting was, right? Coming from an engineering background, no one in my family or my friend circle knew what consulting was, right? And most of the people around me, professionals, didn't know either, right? So I wanted to create a platform where I sort of explain to others in a very real way what consulting is, right? There's a lot of content out there that talks about it in a very structured training type of way. And I wanted to give people a real glimpse into life of what it is to be a consultant. So hence I created the Consulting Guy.
Yeah.
Now, I had shot 3 or 4 videos, I remember, very excited, right? All enthusiastic. And I released two videos or 3 videos, and I get staffed on probably one of the tougher projects of my career. And it's all the posts, everything just goes downhill from there. And this is before the big boom. I think last year was a big boom in social media and everyone's starting their channels and side hustles and everything. So this is now 4 years ago, where I wanted to I was doing it, it was working, but then work still took my primary time. So I
Yep.
just focused on that, and it sort of died out. But it was a coming together of my interest in recording and telling stories through a creative means, and my goal to educate people on what this career is in a very real fashion.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so you had videos on your Instagram, or did you put it on a YouTube channel?
No, neither. So I just shot them, and I shared them with like close friends.
Okay.
Yeah. I never had like a Mohammad Misbah YouTube page, and you come and look at videos. So I would shoot something, put it on maybe Facebook where a close friend circle would see it, or I would send it to family and friends, and they would just boost my ego and say it's great, and that was about it.
Okay, sounds good. I was like, wait, I don't remember seeing anything.
No, I never posted. The only posts that I did have were consulting related, starting with the consulting guy.
Yep. All right. So this is something that I know everyone probably has to deal with. So if you are in consulting, how do you explain consulting to your parents?
You throw my questions back at me. So it is, before I give the answer and buying me time to think, it's the toughest question, because that consulting is a lot of things, right? And I always try to get the right answer by asking others, and hopefully I could put it all together one day and come up with the answer. But I think truly consulting is, if I were to define it, or consultants are, or a career is, where if you run a firm, or if you run any sort of company, and you want to grow or invest or do anything that's not part of your core domain, you hire external counsel to help you get there, right? And they will be sort of supplement to your business and drive sort of the same goals that you're hoping for. So just, the easiest way to describe it is just hiring someone to do the job that you're not skilled at, right? Like a plumber is a consultant to them, if I'm really dumbing it down.
Yep.
Right. An electrician is an electrical consultant, right? Same thing with us, where we're financial services, life sciences, technology, etc. Right? We have those expertise, and we help banks or other companies, tech companies that may not have that domain to come in.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of curious about your definition, because I've always given mine, and then my mom is like, that's not enough. I need more than that.
My dad still, I'm pretty sure my dad still thinks I don't have a job sometimes, right? When it's like from home, or, when I'm just traveling all over back in the day, right? So I don't think it ever changes with our parents.
Yeah. So there's some few personal questions that I want to ask before we move into the career. So what are your aspirations in life? Which is a pretty deep question, but.
Oh, that's a very, very deep question. Aspirations for life. I think as I get older, it's becoming more and more, I would say, real. And I forget who said this, and I heard this in the movie, and it clicked with me very well. But the quote was, "Every man has two lives, and the second one begins when he realizes he only has one."
Ooh, I like
so
that.
I think when my son was born, that's where for the first time in my life, I saw the timeline of my life appear in front of me. Before then, I was invincible. Before then, I was going to live forever and do whatever and take any risks that I can and not be hurt or adversely affected. But after the birth of my son and life hitting me hard, that's when I realized that, holy shit, maybe I've already spent a third of my life, and I have a couple decades left to make something better of myself, my family, this world. And it's really not about these material things that I've focused on for the past couple of years. So now I think if I were to define my goals for life, it's truly to raise a good family with good values, to be a good father, to be a good husband, to be a good son, a brother, a neighbor, right? A citizen, a human, first and foremost, and then leave off the world better than I came into it for all those different components. Right. And that relates to making sure I do my best work, right? So I can leave them financially secured. I passed on the good values that I've acquired through the years. So they have a building block and they can stand off on those foundations. So yeah, I think that's the goal now. It's not really the craze that I had before to kill it everywhere. I think those will be pluses. And I think it's still a desire to keep driving and keep being successful, because I think that's a means to an end, the end being what I just mentioned.
Yep. That's interesting because not to mention age or anything, but you were right now so far the oldest podcast guest I've had. And it tells me a little bit different because I've asked like these particular personal questions to every guest I've had too, and their answer is different. But the way you mentioned it, honestly, I was looking forward to this podcast interview because I knew I was going to be getting a little bit different. It's not a bad thing. I just want to.
You just aged me. I think I'm still a millennial for those hearing. So I don't know if you're talking to Gen Zs now, but it's funny because with some of my coworkers, I always joke around where I used to call them millennials when they act snobby, and they always just say, "Hey, you're one too." Right? But no, I think it's something that everyone realizes as they mature and they age and they go through a couple of experiences. Especially now with COVID, right, where unfortunately death is all around us. I think everyone that I speak to has been affected in some way, shape, or form. And you really can't think of life as this game where you just got to beat everyone and take the trophies and that's it. I used to be like that. Don't get me wrong, right? I was probably cutthroat, die hard, my way or the highway, but that's not life, right? That's not a healthy life. It's really about doing your absolute best, and that may make you the CEO, that may make you the next Jeff Bezos, absolutely, right? Don't let that fire die, but also realize that that should be a means to an end, and it's truly about leaving this place a lot better than you came to it.
Very profound.
I don't know, maybe it's the lack of sleep.
Going into the career section, we already mentioned that you came from a mechanical engineering background. So I was very curious about how was your process getting your job at Accenture? So like you first found out about consulting. I think you mentioned you were having a meal with your aunt or something, and then someone next door, or not next door, like the table next by was actually like a consultant. So how did that get from that point to the point of actually getting your foot in the door with Accenture?
Absolutely. So I wish I had a more profound explanation, but simply saying, I think it was pure luck. And luck catered with, I had a good GPA and all that good stuff, right? And I passed the interviews. But just to extend your story about myself, essentially, I did not know anything about consulting. Didn't even know it was a career, didn't even know what people did. You asked me what consulting was, I could probably just look up a dictionary and define the word for you, right? But I had done a couple of internships in my undergrad, all within engineering. One of them was in like a little business setting. And I just wasn't satisfied, right? If I knew something, it was that I probably don't want to be an engineer for the rest of my life, right? No dig to any engineers. I think you guys are much more intelligent than I am, but it's not a career that with my personality, I could have survived, right? Or been the best at, right? I wanted something that was client facing. I wanted something that was a little, always sort of in flux, always changing depending on where I was going, my clients, the problems that I was solving, right? That's sort of what I wanted. And in my internships with engineering firms, it wasn't that, right? It was very specific to, a part of the bridge or a part of the car or this and that, right? And you were just working with an engineer, drafting and designing and ordering parts and that sort of thing. So I definitely knew that I did not want that. And it so happened that this is now around October, September timeframe in 2011, I would say. Last year before graduating. Yeah. Now I'm aging myself.
I was about to say that.
Yeah. It's crazy. I used to hear other people say that, and now I'm saying that. It's crazy how time flies. I was sitting, it was a dinner, a family dinner, a family friends dinner or something. And some people behind me were talking about, their aunt who travels and has clients, and she does strategy, and strategy is a sexy word, right? And this was around the time frame where people start applying for jobs. There's career fairs coming. So I was like, listen, I don't know these people, but I just got to ask them. I may not get the opportunity again. Right. So I still remember, I turned around, I was like, hey, I really apologize for eavesdropping, but what is it that your aunt does? Because, I'm about to graduate and I love what I'm hearing, but I don't know what that is. Right. And they go like, oh, she's a consultant, just naturally just sort of said it. And that was the first time in my life when I heard the word in the context of a career. And I forget the firm she worked at, but that night I went back and I Googled consulting, right up on it, understood which firms are consulting firms. I didn't even know what firms were consulting firms. And I realized that Accenture had an open interview slot, or they were requesting interviews from the students. And that night was the last night to apply.
Wow.
Literally, like 12 a.m. that
Lucky.
night was the night where the request for interview closes. So I think it was like an hour left before 12 a.m. So I mean, I'm like, oh, holy shit, like I gotta apply. So I send my application in, and then my status goes to pending, right? So for a couple of days, the status remains pending. And then Accenture goes through, now I know the process, right? Hundreds of resumes, and they select the ones that they want to call back for an interview. So the third day or second day, my resume came back as interview accepted. So I was ecstatic. I was like, oh my God, like this is great because it's a career that I wanted. I love it. It sounds great. I'm going to jump in. And then like 8 hours later, it's shifted to not accepted.
Oh,
yeah. And I was so disheartened. I still remember I was on, the college campus, and I was sitting there just thinking to myself, like, damn, like now I got to select one of these other, thankfully I had other options, but I'm like, this is not what I wanted. Like, come on, God, please, like, help me. And I was so sad. I didn't eat lunch that day. I was it was a gloomy day. And I actually took screenshots of my iPhone where it said accepted and not accepted because I wanted to fight. I was like, you guys accepted me, and then you guys rejected me. What gives?
You still have it?
I still have it because it keeps me grounded that, some moments in your life, the biggest moments that define your life could be by chance or luck.
Yeah.
Right. And I love looking at it, right, every now and then. And I was like, this is it. Like my career's over. I'm never going to be anything. I'm going to be an engineer behind a computer for the rest of my life, working on a screw on an aircraft. Right. And that's my life. And then the next day I wake up and it had miraculously shifted back to invited. Oh my God, the roller coaster. And I was so happy. And then, we set the interview date. I went through the rounds and got hired into Accenture. And the rest is history. So that's cool. That's how it started. Totally by chance, a roller coaster of emotions leading up to getting accepted.
Do you even remember if you had a case interview? Because like if you came from engineering and that was literally the first day you heard about consulting, were you prepared or did you even get one?
I actually did prepare for cases. Okay. Yeah, I remember purchasing Management Consulted. It's still a blog or company out there. I purchased their consulting Bible. And I still have a printout somewhere from all these years. It just sits in my collection. I should give it to people to like go in because I think it's people overdo cases, I think. Right. There's a big industry behind case prep, but it's just, if you break it down to its fundamentals that we consultants like to do, right? It's basic. So I just use that as a guide. I prepped for it. I prepped for like the whole STAR methodology back then, right? And how to give answers. Cause that was going to be my first real job interview. So it turned out that there was no case for the position that I was going for. So back in the day, I had first interviewed within Accenture. The position that was open was system integration, which is now the technology consultant. Yep. Right. Management consulting wasn't a target for Rutgers where I went back then. Now they're open to everything, I think. So I prepped for the case, but I never got a case. I think I would have done well. I wasn't too afraid. Like, some people get a little caught up with the word case. I was very comfortable going in. I had all these internships and I had all these different experiences and stories to tell. And Kareem, I forget his last name, Holmesy, I think, was the MD who interviewed me, who's still at Accenture. Love the guy. He comes back and recruits out of Rutgers every year. We just started chatting at some point in the interview, right? He was talking about his love for Rutgers, and he had purchased like season pass tickets to the football team. And that's what the conversation migrated to. Right. It became very natural. And I think that's when I realized this may be something that I may get accepted to. And I think it was a week before Thanksgiving where they extend the offers, where I heard my offer and I fell out of my chair. I told my parents, being a first generation American, just telling that to my parents and how proud they were, especially my dad, that all these struggles that they had gone through, I had gone through, everyone had gone through, that it came to some successful short-term end, was great.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this was something that I was also kind of curious about. You started out in systems integrations, and then you eventually went into management consulting.
Yeah, I've been all over. So I'll tell you that story as well. So I started in SI, system
Okay.
integration, but the first engagement that I did, and henceforth, was in management consulting.
Okay.
So my client, at the time, they were doing some like strategy assessment for I think some like revenue reduction or something. It was a big bank, big five bank, top five bank, and it was a 8-month long project. And 6 months into it, the MCAL, back in the day when we had MCALs and CALs, which is the management consulting client account lead of the account, literally came to me. She's like, "Hey, I don't know why you're SI." I'm like, "What is that?" And that's how naive I was. Like, what is that? Like, SI versus MC. She's like, "Oh, they're different practices." And now I realize she was doing it because she wanted to build her practice and the charge codes and who gets the revenue and whatever. But I think she meant it out of a good place of her heart, and it helped me long term transfer. But she's like, "Hey, I'll sponsor you into MC." I was like, "Okay." I mean, I didn't even know, right? Like, she's like, "Yeah, you're doing MC work since you started, and it just makes sense for you to come over. You've been doing it for 6 months. You're probably going to be here for another year. Why don't you come over?" So I got sponsored into MC within 6 months of joining, 6 or 7 months, and then I stayed within MC. And then that's around the time where Accenture did the formal split of strategy, MC, and technology.
Yep.
So when that happened, I got bucketed into strategy,
Ooh.
right? Because of the work that I was doing.
Yep.
I mean, I had not done a full delivery at that point, right? So I was doing the front end work and everything and the strategy work. So I was doing strategy then for about a couple of months, where end of year happened. I got promoted to manager, I believe, at that point. When I got promoted to manager, the CC that I was aligned to was no longer in strategy. So when I got promoted, they pulled me out of strategy and put me back into, back then it was like industry or MC, just like the regular financial services.
Yep.
Right. Throughout this whole thing, my day-to-day, my work never changed. Right. And I never really cared about like titles, never really cared about, I need to be an SI, MC, whatever. I just wanted to do good work and make sure that I'm getting the good, big opportunities that's going to give me the visibility to grow and give me the skill set that I need for the next level. And I was getting that. I was content. Pay was slowly increasing along the way as well. So I was happy about that. And then, at that point, I remained within MC, and then did some more specializations within like sub practices within MC and stayed there. And right before I left Accenture, there was when Julie came in, there was another sort of restructuring and reorg. And that's where I still did MC, but then I became part of the technology practice to lead some of that work up front within the CRM space. I think I still can't, I'm not fully sure where I ended up, but I think that's where it was at the end. So I've been all over.
Yeah, that's the part that I was actually a little bit confused of, because like I mentioned before, I knew about you through Roger, and Roger was on a Salesforce project, and that was a project you were on.
Yes.
So when I heard you were in management consulting, but this sounds like a tech thing, I was like, where you fall? I don't even know.
Yeah. It's so we do a lot of split engagements, right? Where you have MC present, you have TC present, you have ops sometimes, right? Development, everything. So my advice is always to not care about, where you stand. Everyone plays a critical role. There's skill sets that you have, or you as in my counterparts have, that I don't have, that are needed, and vice versa, right? Things that I have that my counterparts don't have that are needed. So it's the good, that was an amazing engagement. We had an amazing team, amazing leaders, amazing co-work. Everything was great about that engagement. Learned a lot. It was a multi-year deal. And we had all those components playing in. And the client was part of our team too. So, bigger mix.
So what kind of projects did you have earlier on? Was it also related to CRM and Salesforce, or was that something you later did?
So they were mostly related to CRM by choice.
Okay.
So similar to my mindset in when I started college, right, was that I need to pick a major and pick it fast and stick to it,
Yep.
right? Some of my extended friends, right, I saw how they picked their major too late or shifted down the road, and they were still like struggling to figure out their life, right, for lack of a better explanation.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to be that, right? I wanted to join. I wanted to pick my domain and stick to it and become the go-to guy for that expertise,
Yep.
right? That's what I wanted my brand to be. That hey, if within financial services, anyone has any question on CRM, they come to me first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I worked towards from, I was going to say freshman year, from analyst, from analyst throughout senior manager, right? So my very first engagement in which I got transferred over to MC was CRM. And then since then, for the most part, they have been CRM related.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference being that as I grew the ranks, they were larger engagements and
Mm-hmm.
more towards the delivery lead role.
Mm-hmm.
They were more delivery focused versus some of the earlier engagements were short, quick strategy engagements, right? Doing a total cost of ownership, doing a sort of revenue versus cost assessment, a business case, doing roadmaps, that type of stuff.
Okay.
Vendor assessments, etc.
Okay. So earlier on, you were doing more management consulting work within the CRM space, not necessarily in financial services. Then,
All within FS. All
oh,
within.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remained. That's as I said. I remained FS CRM, and I sort of put blinders on, right? Like I just wanted to know FS, and I wanted to know CRM.
Why were you so passionate about FS?
It's easy, right? We're in the Northeast. Well, I live in the Northeast. Well, so do you, right? You're right there. We're in the Northeast, and the banking, right? Industry, financial services industry is everywhere over here. I don't know how things are going to change when everyone becomes remote, but it just was a natural, easy clients, easy commutes, easy to build relationships, right? I could go to any place in New York in a restaurant, take my clients there, right? Versus having to travel outside, right? And go. There was one point in my career where I could have become CMT, where I did a quick engagement, still within CRM, but with a CMT client. Very different vibe, and it didn't align with my sort of way of thinking, right? I like fast pace, I like cutthroat, right? And I think in some of these other industries, they have a different culture, and it didn't align too well with my sort of mindset. Not to say that's good or bad, just didn't work for me.
Yep. So this is something that I've noticed in, at least within Accenture, the management consulting area focuses a lot more on industry rather than a discipline. I mean, in your case, you did focus a little bit more on CRM instead, but would you say that is the case in a lot of Accenture, or just within like what you've been working on?
It could be both. Now, just to think about it, because I was part of a practice that sort of went across different industries, but also within my financial service industry, you have banking, insurance, and capital markets. It went across those three as well. So I had the opportunity to work across all those three sub-industries, subsectors, if you will, right? I did insurance projects, I did capital markets, right? Huge projects in capital markets, huge projects in banking, both retail, investment, corporate. So I maybe by design, because of my practice, I got that opportunity. But I also know that there's a lot within MC that's very specific to your industry or within your special domain, right? Folks within capital markets that are expert in within, sales and trading, or that are experts within retail banking, right? They do that type of stuff day in and day out, and that's their domain. Whereas my major was CRM, my minor were these industries, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, at least in the technology area, we focus more on the specific skills. So in my case, it'd be Workday, and then even further than that, Workday financials. But I haven't really focused on any particular industry. I mean, at the end of the day, the sales team, or at least the leadership, is the one that dictates which ones are the major plays. So that does kind of play a role. But yeah, we don't necessarily, I've always liked to kind of say that like technology focuses on skill and management consulting focuses on like an industry, or at least a particular discipline.
Yeah, sometimes I think sometimes that would be true. And I think Definitely below, I would say, manager level, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's better to make it universal, and that's the structure that we had at Accenture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where below below manager, I think it's one pool of resources that can be staffed across industries.
Yep.
That's the change that Julie brought, and I think that's a great one, because I think there isn't a significant amount of difference or a new skill set that more junior people can bring in, that it's very tailored, very structured, that does not lend themselves to other sub industries.
Mm-hmm.
And at least from my experience. So I think as you grow within the firm or within your career, you start specializing more and more.
Yep.
But as you're sort of still within below manager ranks, that's where you're still open to different things.
Mm-hmm. So do you know of anyone that is still up there in the ranks but have not specialized? Is it possible to do that without specializing?
So how do you define specialize, I guess?
Let's say for example, within an industry vertical or within a domain or anything like that.
I think save the cows, right? Like if you're a client account lead, that's where you're a generalist.
Okay.
At least I think, because you're selling Accenture to that client, right? That's everything for MC, TC, ops, offshore, like outsourcing, everything.
Yep.
They're more like, they're very senior. Some of them are very, very senior, and they're selling, Accenture and everything that we offer, or any firm. I just use Accenture as an example. For the most part, everyone has a specialty, right? Because you need to have a brand.
Yep.
Just like we build our brands outside of careers, right? You have to have a brand within your firm, and the clients appreciate you if you're known within your domain.
Yeah.
Right. So the more senior folks, right, are experts within their domain, and they're publishing thought leadership, they're publishing white papers, they're going to these different talks and sort of expanding the industry. I think as consultants, we have the advantage of taking different vantage points of our clients and coming up with our perspectives on where the industry is headed, right? And you need to be a specialist within that domain to enable that sort of perspective. So I think most people are in some shape, way, or form specialists within a domain, and that's how it's set up.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have to be nimble enough still, because I think at any point, any leader can come in and say, we're going to go from one model to another model, but you still generally remain within your domain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you actually lead to a pretty interesting question that I have. So you went from analyst to consultant to manager to senior manager. How have you seen your responsibilities and expectations have changed? Because you mentioned white papers, and I did not even know about that until now, that is, I mean, probably not a responsibility, but probably an expectation.
Yeah. I think, and there's, we were talking about this before. I think you've done, and Kajal and some of these other folks have done a great job sort of explaining different levels and what's expected. But to take my thoughts on it, I think analysts and early consultants, analysts definitely to me is training years, right? You have your training wheels on in the sense where you are being told what to do. And I still remember where I had a prescribed list of tasks that my managers would tell me to do. And my goal, and I'll talk from a perspective of like what I set my goals to be rather than what people were telling me. As an analyst and early consultant, I just wanted to learn. Right? I wanted to learn in the sense of, building the best presentations, right? How to communicate effectively through this medium, which is PowerPoint or Excel or verbal communication and nonverbals, right? So I studied my leaders. I V20, V30, V40 of every document, right, was going on. And there were some very tough managers, right? But those tough managers taught me the most. So I just wanted to pick up those skills because I didn't have it. I still remember my first engagement. One of the senior managers asked me to set up a meeting on Outlook. I didn't know how to do that, right? It's sort of embarrassed to admit it now, but as an engineer, you never did it. Right. And this is before any training or anything. So, I'm just being very transparent where I had to Google like how to set up a meeting with external clients. So I just wanted to learn because I knew that this is a new field for me. So first 2 years, I'd say I was just like, drinking through the fire hose and learning. Slowly as I was learning, I was also expanding my network. Right. And I did that through my, people talk about networking a lot, right? Hanging out, going out and talking. That I think your work is your biggest network, your output, right? The more successful projects and deliverables you output, right, the more your network is going to grow within the ranks. And that's how I let my work speak for me, where I was very meticulous in making sure everything was perfect. And I delivered, and I was valuable to the team, to the client, to my managers, where I was irreplaceable. And when that happened, I always found my next engagement right off the bat.
Yep.
I think I in the 9 years I was at Accenture, I used my scheduling maybe 3 times, right? The very first engagement, I think, and 2 in the middle somewhere. Everything else was through networking. And when I say networking, is that people knew I was coming off, so I already had a project lined up. Right. So that's the extent of, I think, you had to focus on, and what I wanted to make sure I was building my brand as I get into my consultant and manager years.
Yep.
My consultant years were now taking what I've learned and doing the best job at it and delivering in terms of coming up with plans and making sure I can deliver my work stream. Manager, it sort of expands, right? Where you have multiple work streams and you're expected to come up with a plan to deliver and actually build the client relationships. And that's, I think, manager year was the first time around where I was always speaking to clients. I was always client facing, but that's where you start building longer relationships that are going to be fruitful, perpetually. Right, where people realize that this is a person who knows their domain, so I'm going to go to them for all my questions, right? And they represent Accenture for me.
Yep.
So that was the big pivot I distinctly remember happening, where when I made manager, that was sort of, or within that time frame, clients were coming to me and asking me all sorts of questions about things that were part of my domain and were not, and I was expected to represent the firm. And put the pieces together, or pull the right pieces together, pull the right managing directors or SMAs and everyone together, and get them in a conversation in the room. Yep. So that sort of maturity happens there. And then senior manager, you're very focused on delivering, right, one or many projects at the same time, growing the book of business.
Okay.
Right. To make it, so there's 2 different tracks from senior manager, right? Either you can go into the sales track, to the partner or MD track, or you can go to the director track, right? Which is more of a subject matter expert or a domain expert, that you're not too focused on sales, but you may be focused on delivery, right? So you don't have those hard, concrete numbers that you have to hit every year or you're out. I think most firms fall in up and out culture. So to make it to the next level from senior manager, if you're in the sales track, you have to not only make sure your engagements, your relationships, everything is great, but you also have to sell. Right? You have to sell new, you have to sell within the engagements that you have. And that's a very big responsibility, right? And that only happens if you now have built a good network, built a good brand, have like junior people that are part of you that support you, because you're not going to be able to keep up with the inflow of requests, right? So if a proposal comes in, or if a client asks, who are you going to turn to help you with this big deal project or big proposal? Right. And if you haven't really structured everything and built a team around you and people want to work with you, it's going to be very difficult. Right. So you're focused on brand building, but team building. And the only way to do that successfully is if you were true to a true leader and you helped others grow within their careers.
Yep.
Right. So one metric of senior managers make it to the next level is also, are you building a team around you and you're grooming people to take your spot? Right. You have to kind of do that very structurally to move on. And I think that's a great thing, because it gives a lot of the A-type gunners a pause, because throughout the career, you're like, I'm depending on myself. I'm going to gun it, work 30 hours, right, in a 24-hour day, not sleep, and I'm going to deliver this.
Yeah.
You get to a point where you just cannot sustain it, right? So a lot of the people, and I had this challenge, right, where when things got so overwhelming ahead of my project, I have new requests coming in, I got to sell, I got a big C-suite meeting coming up, right? All these things are piling up, right? And I'm used to someone who just took it on, and I trusted myself to do it. But even if I trust myself, there's not enough time or bandwidth to do.
Yep.
Right? That's when you like, okay, wait. My approach has been wrong, right? There needs to be a support system. There needs to be a team that I need to build as I grow, and make sure they're growing as well, so that those projects trickle down and everyone sort of grows together. So I think that's the big pivot to senior manager, and then MD is sales and relationships and selling at that point.
Okay. Yeah, that was the part that I was interested about, the fact that like there goes sales and then there's more director, so more about being like a subject matter expert of the field, particularly on that. So did you want to go in the managing director
Yeah,
track?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I think I will continue on the sales track. I love not to be a salesperson. I don't like selling per se. I think sales has a negative connotation sometimes.
Hmm.
I think it just the big thing with sales is identifying a problem, a real problem, not a fictitious problem to
Yep.
sell. Identifying a real problem and providing a solution to solve it
Hmm.
back to your clients, whether or not your clients know or don't know about it.
Okay.
That's a good salesperson, right? It's kind of like,
Like a preemptive consultant almost.
yeah, like Wolf of Wall Street, like sell me this pen scenario, right? It's a very simple and funny scene, but
Hmm.
the way that guy answered, the first guy answered is like, hey, do you have a pen? He goes like, no. He's like, well, then here's a pen. You got to buy it. It's
Hmm.
like he didn't know that he had a need for something.
Yeah.
He evoked that emotion, and then he's like, oh shit, I need it.
Hmm.
Right, so sort of similar where our clients goals, and everyone has the same goals, right? Everyone wants to grow their business in the cheapest way, right, and be most profitable out in the market. That's probably the simplified goal for every firm.
Yep.
So if they're trying to do that, you have to understand their culture, their practices, the business good enough to then come back and say, hey, by the way, I know we're doing this engagement, but have you looked at these other areas or these other technologies? Some of them your competitors are utilizing. Maybe you should think about that as well. And that starts a conversation, and then you talk about numbers and growth and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's selling.
Hmm.
So I think I am good at that, and I like doing that. I think there's others much smarter than me that focus on growing a platform or growing a skill set, and they're going to be the pioneers within that field, and all the credit to them, right? And I rely on them to be successful, quite frankly, in my job, because they're the ones that are actually trailblazing, and we're sort of flashing it around to the clients, so then
Yep.
we could connect the dots.
Hmm. Okay. So during your time at Accenture, how much was it was sales and how much of it was actually client engagements? Or was it just more of on top of client engagements, you had to hit sales?
Yeah, the latter. I
Okay.
think, yeah, I think up until senior manager, you're mostly doing client engagements.
Hmm.
For me, at least. Senior managers, when you have a hard pivot and you have to sell if you want to
Hmm.
grow. Like there's no real sales numbers, but you got to sell an X amount before you're ready for the next level. Because once you do make MD or partner, you do have hard sales targets.
Hmm.
And it's a little different where I think in Big Four, the director or senior manager levels have sales targets.
Yep. So how different is it from the roles of, at least in this case, senior managers doing sales compared to a sales team?
So the sales capture team, you mean? Like
I
the
think so.
pure, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I know like for us, we have sales team, but they're not a managing director or senior manager.
So the sales teams, I think the one, if I understand your question, like the pure sales teams,
Hmm.
they're focused on seeing what RFPs are out there,
Okay.
right? What are the demands of the clients, and we pull them in to pull every piece together
Okay.
and sort of interface with the procurement of the clients and sort of get that in. Sometimes they're the ones that pull together pitches. Sometimes they're the ones that help pull together the proposals. But for the most part, it's a collective effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a question I'm probably the most curious out of you is how do you balance all of this on top of parenthood?
Oh boy. Um, I'm still struggling to figure that one out. And I think it happens just just as life goes on,
Hmm.
um, where I do my best to keep structured in when I wake up, when I go to bed, and that's the most I could control, right?
Mm.
I make sure I'm up at 5 a.m. every day. I know it's like one of those little things, but it just helps me get everything aligned and ready,
Hmm.
right? Like if I'm up at 5, the day is going to go well. If I'm not up at 5 around that time frame, then everything is going to be backed up. I'm going to go to sleep later. I'm not going to get at least 6 hours of sleep, and it just sort of trickles in. So I make sure I do that. More and more, I make sure that the weekends are 100% for the family.
Okay.
right? I think you did a post about that, right? Recently, how to balance everything. I make sure that the weekends, right? No work on the weekends, which sometimes I don't follow through on because there's some side things that are going on, either within real estate or some other ventures, but
Yeah.
um, work related, right? I will give it 120% Mondays to Fridays, but when the weekend comes, I try to just disconnect completely. So that's little here and there. I'm not good at it, to be very honest. My wife fights me. The only fights that we have is because of the work amount of work that I do, and the lack of commitment sometimes I have within weekdays or weekends to the family. So I'm trying to figure that one out.
Okay. So I know your son is like about 2 years old, so maybe this wasn't an issue when this happened, but how did you balance travel? Were all of your clients within the New York, New Jersey area?
I still remember when I got married, I had to delay my honeymoon a year.
Ooh.
Because I could not get 3 to 4. I wanted to take at least a month off. I could not get it because we were in the middle of a project. So it definitely affected my personal life, if you will. And then first 3 years of my marriage, I was still traveling. So sometimes my wife would come along. Sometimes,
oh wow,
I'd be out on the road myself alone. And I think 3 years into it, that's where I was like, listen, this is not sustainable. And luckily, that's the time when we had shifted to a regional model, where we tried to keep people within regions, right? So I did my best that if even it were a 2-hour drive, I would make that drive, right, instead of staying there. And I know people choose consulting for the travel and hotel. I hate hotels. I just cannot sleep on. If it's not my bed, I can't sleep on it. It's just which is a bad problem to have as a consultant because you're on the road most of the time, in theory, back in the day. But I despised at the end of the 3-4 years. I think 4 years I traveled like every year, every day. I hated it. I hated the smell of the soap of the hotel, the smell of the. It got to a point where it was just like, oh my God, I got to stop this. And then luckily, since then, the last 4 years, I've been very local. The engagement in the bank engagement, that was in the city, local. So we that was 2 years I was local. After that, I got another client that was local for another year and a half. So I've been very lucky that I'd been local since then. So with the baby, it had been very easy to manage, right? I was home. That was a big fear of mine, right? I didn't want to be a FaceTime dad, where my son only knew me, or my child only knew me through FaceTime. So yeah, got lucky there.
Yeah, this is the part where I'm not even sure how I would approach this, but luckily and also unluckily is like due to the pandemic, more firms and more clients are probably not going to be traveling as much, so probably be a lot better on top of the regional model, even if we were to travel. So it could be actually a good positive sign for a lot of future and current parents. I don't know though for sure if that will be happening.
I think so. I think now people have found a corner of their home where they call their home office. Before, I think the first couple of months, everyone was panicking. You saw kids running around in the background, babies crying. My son, I still remember, it was a steerco meeting, right? I'm leading it with senior folks, and my son is like, tapping the. And I'm like, listen, I'm so sorry, but there's no one around. I have to see him. And everyone understood. I think everyone was very understanding that this is crazy times. But now everyone has a home office, and and I agree that we are going back to a hybrid work structure. We're not going back 100% office. I think so. Maybe the more senior people travel more, the more junior people travel less. There's going to be some happy medium at the end of the day, and that's going to help a lot of people out. I personally love that we will have an opportunity to stay home, but then also go to the office. I think that connection with your team members took the biggest hit, where now, because we don't see them, we don't interact with them, there's no human connection. You're just another body that's on this project. I don't really know you as Christine, as Mohammed, as whomever. And it sort of, sometimes when there's tension in the room, it doesn't help. Right. Where back in the day, if, we could have gone out of a bad meeting, I could have yelled at someone, they could have yelled at me. 5 minutes later, we could have had a coffee, just talked about it, got over it. Can't do that anymore. Right. So people internalize that and sort of bubbles in until it's ready to explode.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm like, okay, maybe we will be able to stay in consulting a little bit longer. But my boyfriend and I, we're both in consulting. That's where it gets a little bit interesting because what if he goes on site, then I go on site, then like what else is gonna happen? But luckily, at least in technology consulting, we travel way less. He has not traveled at all prior to the pandemic at all, and I've only traveled like maybe once or twice a month. We had a hybrid
Good.
from the very beginning. It wasn't something that we had 100% travel unless it was stated otherwise.
Very good, very good. I think they'll try to push to come back. I know a lot of the places
Yeah.
are ready to go back. Even within our firm, we had a plan to go back, but it'll be a hybrid.
All right. So I know you branded yourself as the consulting guy. You have the consulting podcast, but like if you were to ever leave consulting, if you ever left consulting, what would it be if you were to?
So let me give two answers there. Firstly, I probably will leave consulting at some point.
Okay.
I don't think it would be to another other like career altogether. I think once I'm done with consulting, I'm done with corporate America. So you asked me like what the short-term goal is, right? I think short-term, I would probably want to be financially independent enough where I don't need to work, for a corporate structure. I have my sort of means set, and I have my spending set where I know that I have enough saved and I could sort of do what I want to do to stretch that out. But if I were to, if I were to leave, it would probably, I would probably continue to invest across the different asset classes, equities, crypto, real estate, precious metals, travel. Have definitely maybe something more education related.
Okay.
Maybe it'd be training, maybe it'd be, I don't know yet, right? I think I have to structure it. I do want to write a book. So I started a draft in my time off. But that's probably years in the making still. I start things and then I put them on the shelf and I look at it until inspiration comes. So inspiration came and then it went away for that one. I want to write a book, want to travel more. But I think long-term, I would want to start some sort of maybe technology company, maybe small consulting company myself, right? Something that I would do and run. But let's see. Right now, I don't see myself leaving anytime soon. I think I'm fully dedicated and I love what I do. I think there's a shit ton more to learn, right? Which keeps me excited. And I love that we have an opportunity to be in the forefront and understand and help the industry grow. You're not going to get that in any career. And it pays well.
All right. So what advice would you give to yourself as an analyst knowing what you know today?
Good question. I'm going to tell you the advice that is the best advice that I've been given in my life.
Okay.
And it was not given, it was actually read on a Reddit forum. I'll tell you, I was reading.
Best source.
Yeah, like I think it was a post about someone had asked a question on Ask Reddit. Like someone had grown up without a father and they're like, what are some fatherly advice that you would tell to your child? And one of the comments hidden beneath like the string of comments, not upvoted a lot, was literally a statement that said, just show up, right? And I think that summarizes all of the good advice that anyone has ever given. And I think it's the biggest thing that sticks with me because it's simple and it's so true. Literally, I think to be successful in life, you have to just show up, right? I think Jordan said something similar to at some point. Right? It's like, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're going to fail. It doesn't matter if you're going to be embarrassed, right? But you showing up, right? And showing up means like, making sure you build that deck, making sure you go the extra hour and do some research on the topic that you're not aware of, making sure that you go to this place and do that thing, right? Just do it, right? If you continue doing it, at some point the stars do align and things connect and then you get accelerated.
Yeah.
Right. But if you don't show up and you're making excuses, and same thing with the podcast, same thing with my channel, right? I can make 2 videos and they can be, stellar pieces that win the Oscars or whatever, is so well directed. But if I just do that one thing, I'm done.
Yep.
Right. It's the continuous showing up and the continuous posting and the continuous engagement that makes you grow and makes your content get better. right? If you look at your content from day one versus now, you'll see an exponential growth in quality and quantity and engagement, right? Same, just because you're showing up, right? So same thing applies for analysts, right? That are starting off, right? You're not going to know everything. You're going to have, I remember my first meeting with my client. This is, imagine like having no meetings with any clients in college to talking to a VP at a top like 10 insurance company.
Yep.
Right? I felt my heartbeat in my ear. And I was like, oh my God, I hope my client isn't hearing how afraid I am. It's a real thing. It's a real human reaction to fear. My adrenaline was pumping. I was trying to hold my hand steady so they don't shake, right? I was trying to talk slowly so my voice doesn't crack. These things are very real, and it will happen, and happens to the best of us. I'm now a senior manager telling you these things, but it happened to me as well, right? No one is like born with talent and they just sort of run. Some people are faster at it for sure, but you're capable of acquiring those skills just as well as anyone else. You have to show up, you have to practice, you have to get in front of the mirror, you have to talk to people, you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions over and over and over again until it's just what you're used to. And that's what I did, and it worked really, really well, right? And I had the accelerated career within I think 8 years, I was able to go from analyst to senior manager. Actually, 6 years if you don't count the 2 years in senior manager. So very, very good advice. And I think that's the best advice that I could give anyone. It's the simplest. Just show up.
So through that journey, this question just came up in my head. Is like, how have you seen yourself change from that point and being an analyst and all the way up until now?
I think the biggest change has been analyst through, I would say, manager, right? Okay. And this is true for a lot of gunners or whatever you want to call people like that. A-type, there's different crappy names to describe a human flaw. People try to sugarcoat it, but it's a flaw where you're very self-important, right? It's about you making it to the next level. You're gunning it. You don't care about human emotion. You don't care about work-life balance. You don't care about anything but winning, right? And you will win at any expense. Obviously, not anything illegal or anything, but right, you will do whatever you can to make it.
Yep.
Right, and that means that sometimes the relationships you need to build, as you grow, your team, your support, your seniors, your peers, your juniors, that takes a backseat. And that's going to come to bite you when you're more senior, because you're going to you need to rely on those people to continue. And those people need to grow to take your spot, right? And I think that's the biggest advice that I would give myself, is that you're only competing with yourself, right? And I tell you, Christine, like I remember when I didn't have a job and I was in college, my goal in life was to just land a job in corporate America that paid like, a certain amount. And in my life, at some point in my life, I wanted to break like $100,000. That was like the biggest goal of my life. But when I landed my job and it was so close to it, I was like, wait, I got to readjust my goals. and the same thing happens every year, every cycle, right? Yep. So that tells you that humans will never be satiated. We will never be happy with what we have. And the only person I'm killing myself over is myself, because truly no one cares about you. I hate to break it to myself first and others, right? If you think you're going to be some hot shot, making it in X amount of time, making $1 bajillion, this and that, good for you, but no one else gives a shit, right? Everyone has their own life. Everyone has their own happiness. Like you spending time with your boyfriend and your cats and, your new home is probably worth more to you than any promotion, right? And that's true for us, right? So don't kill yourself and kill others for this imaginary rat race that goes. Now, I do not say don't give 100%, give 200%, right? Give your heart out and work honestly, but build the relationships and groom people as you go along. That's the advice I would give myself. Sorry, I said I wish I'd done more of that, but hindsight's 2020.
All right. So moving on to your side hustles. So we talked about the consulting guy. We talked about the consulting podcast. Where do you see that going? Do you see like even more, or do you even want to add on additional? I know you mentioned a book, but that's like way later. But what are the side hustles that you have coming up and what the goals are?
So with the consulting guy, I
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to go back into the original idea behind it, which was
Yep.
like entertaining videos that show reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think there's a medium where you sort of speak to a camera and you sort of explain how to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is extremely valuable and needed. Uh, the medium that I want to sort of build, or the thought that I had behind consulting, but I was like act it out or live it out or go in the street and sort of like have a story, almost like a short movie or film
Mm-hmm.
around a specific topic that shows what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do that, and that's partly because I like to educate, but I also like to direct and tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely going on. I think the podcast I love. It's very easy, and I love talking to people. There's a huge sign up list already, but
Ooh.
um, I've been terrible at it. You're amazing at it. I mean, I was looking at your sign up sheet. It was so well crafted. It had like disclaimers and this and that. I was like, shit, I need to do that. I need to copy. I was sitting there. I was like, all I did was have your name, your number. No, I'm good. Like, I'm probably get sued in the future. So I need to focus more on that and have a bit more structure. But life has been hectic in the past, I would say 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I did pause, and now it's Ramadan. So we're fasting. It's a
Yep.
little to continuously shoot. But the podcast will pick up, and I think we're gonna have more frequent, or I'm gonna have more frequent episodes dropping. I got a lot of good feedback and messages on when the next episode is, who I'm speaking to, and suggestions. And there's a couple of clients that have signed up.
Ooh.
So that's an interesting twist that I'm bringing in to get their perspectives. And the goal is to expand it to have this. I really started the podcast. I'll tell you the story of how it started, actually,
Mm-hmm.
if you have some time, where people fear naturally authority. So if there's a senior manager or a senior executive, if you will, whether it's the client or internal, people are afraid to, especially analysts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or more junior people, you're afraid to even message them or talk to them, right? Or email them. And you read your email like 5 times, this and that. And I really don't like that culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, and I know this because I was the same way sometimes. And then I became a senior manager. And I'm like, wait, I'm still the same person. I still have my fears, my desires, my happiness, etc. So why are we afraid of people?
Mm-hmm.
And it happened in one of my engagements where I asked one of the team members, a more junior team member, to email this senior client. And they asked me like 5-6 questions. Are you sure? What time? This. I was like, what are you doing? Just email them. Matter of fact, don't even email them. Ping them. It's faster. Like, but I don't have the relationship. What if they, think this, think? I was like, oh my god, we need to demystify people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Like, and people who are students sometimes are afraid to speak to consultants like you and
Mm-hmm.
I, right? And we need to demystify that. And the only way to demystify it is to hear your story and try to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's so natural and easy to talk about someone. I mean, how much have people learned through your podcast and talking to you and your life and what you share and others in my podcast about each and every one of us. So that's what I wanted, right? I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
talk to people, senior, junior, in between clients, where there is no longer any fear that, hey, if I ping them, they're going to think this and that. They're people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. The worst that happens is they're not going to reply. And I'm already used to it as a consultant. Right. Right. How many times have you messaged someone senior and you don't get an answer like 4 days down the road? Happens all the time. You don't take it personally. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not thinking behind the scenes like, oh my God, look how stupid this person is. We're never going to promote them. It doesn't happen. Right. But these are real fears that people have. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think long term, I want to continue that and make sure that the medium continues and I continue my creative side. And then in terms of side hustles, I think outside of the social media, I want to double down on real estate as well.
Okay.
Though it's very hot right now. There's a lot of people entering the market. Honestly, I don't know where the market is right now. Everything is pumping. Everything is like 2x, 3x. Nothing makes sense. So I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign. I don't know. So I slowly maybe dollar cost average into everything. And then I think ultimately just continue somewhat related to the creative side, but then also the educational side as I continue.
Mm-hmm. So actually, on a related yet unrelated note, like for real estate, are you thinking about buying to rent out or flipping or just buying and then holding it and
So I 5 years ago, I actually had created a real estate investment fund. Was
ooh.
managing a couple $1 million investors' money, and
Mm-hmm.
we were doing all of that. Right, it was my friend and I, and we were purchasing, flipping, rehabbing, building,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some major projects, right? So my biggest project I think was like $800,000, just within a span of a couple months, and that was
Mm-hmm.
just one. And there were multiple concurrent. Since the birth of my child, and getting promoted and having not enough time in the day to do all these
Mm-hmm.
things, I solely focus on my personal rental portfolio.
Okay.
Yeah, so I own multiple homes within a couple of towns, and that provides residual income coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that slowly has, become substantial,
Yep.
to an extent where it's starting to cover most of my expenses. So then, you could call that financial freedom at that point. But now I know I got to save for my kids' college and et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera. So I think long term, that's the goal,
Mm-hmm.
where every year or so often I would purchase an asset that is producing, right? And at some point, it produces enough where
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to work anymore, and you really do it for the passion or to grow or whatever. But you're not worried about the expenses.
Yep.
I think real estate does provide that because there's tax write-off, there's appreciation, and I know the domain. I'm good at it. I have a team, so I want to continue that on that side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something that I've always been interested in doing. My family does it. My boyfriend's family does it. The thing is, do we do it in New York City? I don't even know if I can
I
afford
don't know, New York. Yeah, like I think the amount of probably what your closet is worth is what my house is worth. So
it.
I stay away.
All right. So to wrap up, where can we find you on social media?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at The Consulting Guy, or you could go to www.theconsultingguy.com, and that will take you to my YouTube channel. There's a website in the works for the Consulting Podcast, and
Okay.
I may at some point branch off the Consulting Podcast as its own channel,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I want to keep some of that separate. So for now, at The Consulting Guy on Instagram is probably the easiest method. Just message me or follow me. I don't like for like. I'm not here to get followers. But if you have any questions, consulting related or life related, anything related that you've heard on this podcast, just reach out to myself and Christine. If people reach out to you through your network,
Yep.
Just forward them to me.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about how you're going to potentially split off your podcast from your YouTube channel right now. Are you going to have original content on your own channel? Or is that the video you're talking about? Okay.
Exactly. So I think, well, maybe not the YouTube, but
Okay.
definitely the Instagram, because right now
Okay.
it's all a hodgepodge of things.
Yep.
It just depends on when I start my next role in a couple of weeks, how much of time commitment I'll need to give to that versus how much free time I'll have to do all these things. I think the podcast I'll continue shooting. It's very easy to shoot a podcast, and I already have a list of people that I want to speak to and get to know. But the videos take a long time to shoot and edit, and it's a one-man show right now. My wife does not want to help.
All right. So what have you been up to lately?
Since I left, it's been now 4 weeks. I've been off work officially. Now imagine almost a decade of emails, and all of a sudden I have no work emails. The first week I was panicking. It felt like I was missing. Like I had to do something that I should be doing, that I'm not.
Like you're in withdrawal almost.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like, that's so bad. Like I want to work, right? When I'm free. It's like I'm a chicken in the coop, and I you put me out of the coop, I want to go back in the coop. But I've been relaxing. I've been spending a lot of time with my wife, my son. We play a lot. We go out to the park. The weather's clearing up. And I intentionally did not want to make this break about my social media, my further career growth. I wanted to just disconnect. That's why you don't see many episodes come out so far.
Yep.
I just want to take a break from all of the noise, if you will, and just connect with my family and clear my mind, do some soul searching, and then when I start again, hit it 200%.
Okay. All right. Yep. So last question I have is, do you have any last words or advice that you would want to give to our listeners?
So firstly, thank you so much, Christine, for having me. It's always great talking to you. I know we always ping each other all the time. So thank you for having me and giving me this platform and hearing from my end. This is the very first podcast I've done about myself.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I don't, like I said, I'm not, I like to hear, but I don't usually like talk about it, but it's interesting. I think just hearing myself and my thoughts come to some tangible voice. It's good. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for the listeners that are going to tune into this. The only advice I would still have is no career is like a straight successful progression. No one just like kills it every single day, right? You will burn out. You will feel like you're not the smartest. You will feel like you're about to get fired. You will feel like you're not going to get a raise. You will feel like you're not going to get hired. All those fears will come, right? But they're part of the growth that you need to go through. And the only thing you need to do, again, is just show up, right? I get the most amount of messages that I get after I release something or I post something is always like, oh my God, I've been doing this for so long. Can I get into this? Or I failed this company. Am I ever going to make it to consult? Like there's always this fear-based conversation.
Yep.
Whereas like, it's so easy if you just stop worrying sometimes. And I granted everyone has their own life position. People have responsibilities and sort of people get stuck in that. But just to show up, right? Keep networking, keep talking, keep applying. And once you get your foot in the door and you continue showing up, the stars will align at some point and you will be accelerated, right? It's true for myself, right? I don't come from a consulting background. I didn't go to an Ivy League. Right. I don't have a higher degree outside of a bachelor's in science. That's it. I'm not the poster child of a accredited, pedigreed individual. Right. But I made sure I showed up. Right. And I'm first generation. Right. There's so many things that are not supposed to be working for me, but here I am. Right. And it's because I think great mentors, listening to them, showing up, not giving up. Right. I had so many bad nights, right? So many good nights, like all of that will come in the mix. But at the end of the day, if you show up, you will make it and continue learning and have a good goal at the end of this, right? And you will be successful.
All right. Thank you so much. And if you want more of Mohammed's amazing wisdom, go to his podcast, go to his Instagram. It will be all down below in the description and in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.